Hello everyone and welcome to another video on my channel Learn with GRV. So today we are going to understand the last Charter Act, that is Charter Act of 1853. So let's get started. So now this is the last Charter Act of the series. As you know, there were basically 4 Charter Acts in 1793, 1813, 1833 and 1853. And if you see, like for example, if you are trying to remember in which year Charter Acts basically came, you just have to remember the first one, 1793, and just keep on adding 20 to it and you will get the other acts. So 793 plus 20, 1793 plus 20, 1813 plus 20, so on and so forth. So now let us see what were the features of this Charter Act. Now, this act separated the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General's Council, and this was a very important step, and it also provided for addition of 6 new members to the council, and this council was called as the and these 6 members were called as legislative councillors. So it was a separate Governor General's Council called as the Indian Central Legislative Council, which worked more or less as a mini parliament. And it was in this act that legislation for the first time was treated as a special functioning of the government, which would require special machinery and special processes. So the first point is that it separated the executive and legislative functions of the Governor General's Council, and the second is that it added, so in the current Governor General's Council, it added 6 new members. These members were called as legislative councillors, and it was a separate Governor General's Council called as the Indian Central Legislative Council, which worked more or less like a mini parliament. So that was the first feature, and this parliament, it adopted the same procedures as the British Parliament. Moving on to feature number 3, then open competition system for civil servants was one of the feature of this Charter Act, and so now the Indians can also take part in the convenated civil services. Now I have highlighted the word convenated civil services to emphasize on one fact, that what exactly is convenated civil service. So let me just tell you that. So what happens in case was that at the time civil services of the company were basically classified into 2 categories. One was the convenated civil services, which was like the higher civil services, and the other was the unconvenated civil services. And if you remember, in the Charter Act of 1833, even in that act, there was a proposition that Indians should be allowed for open competition for the post of civil servants, but that was negated by the Court of Directors of the East India Company. But at this time, this proposal was given. This was one of the features of Act of 1853. And in the same regard, there was a committee formed on Indian civil service in the year 1854, which is called as Macaulay Committee or Macaulay Committee. The pronunciation may vary. Now moving on to the next feature. So this Charter Act also extended the company's rule, and it basically allowed it to retain the possession of Indian territories, but it allowed that on behalf of the British Crown. Also, it did not specify any time period. For example, as we have seen in the previous Charter Acts, that a time period of 20 years was given. For example, in the Charter Act of 1833, a 20-year. In the Charter Act of 1719, it extended the trade monopoly of the company in India for another 20 years. But that did not happen in case of this Charter Act of 1853, because the British Crown wanted that they can actually terminate the company rule whenever they wanted. At any time, the Parliament liked, whenever they wanted. So that is why there was no time frame given. Another feature of Charter Act was that it introduced local representation in the Indian Central Legislative Council. So basically it is the same council that was formed, which consists of 6 legislative councillors, and out of those 6 new members, 4 were from the local bodies, from the local governments of Madras, Bombay, Bengal and Agra. So these were the features of the Charter Act of 1853. Let us go through them once again. The first feature is that it separated the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General's Council. The second is that it added 6 new members to the Governor General's Council, and these 6 new members were called as legislative councillors. And this council was a separate body which was called as Indian Central Legislative Council, which worked more or less like a mini parliament. So this was the act, this was the year where the concept of mini parliament and parliament came into being. Then the open competition for system for civil servants for Indians was open. Earlier it was also proposed in the Charter Act of 1833, but it was negated. This time it was accepted, and Indians could now take part in convened civil services, which is upper class civil services. And there was a committee formed for the same, which is called as Macaulay Committee in the year 1854. The fourth feature of this Act of 1853 was that it extended the company's rule of the British possessions on behalf of the British Crown. That means British Crown said that okay, you can rule on the territories that come under British possessions, but there is no time frame given to you. That means if British Crown wants, it can end the rule of the company at any time. Unlike the previous Charter Act, where a time frame was being continuously extended, it did not happen this time. And then the fifth feature of the Act was that it introduced local representation in the Indian Central Legislative Council. And if you remember, we had 6 out of 6 new members, 4 members were from the local government of Madras, Bombay, Bengal and Agra. So with this, we come to the end of the company rule. If you remember, and let me also show you from the very first slide. Okay, so as you remember, we are studying Indian polity, which comprises of a total of 11 parts, and so it has been divided into 2. The company rule, which was from 1773 to 1858. So in 1773, we have which act did we have in 1773? It is the Regulating Act of 1773, and the last act that we had in company's rule was in the year 1853, which is the 4th Charter Act. After 1858, that is from 1858, we will have the Crown Rule, and we will study about the Crown Rule in the next video. But before that, I am going to do a short revision so that we will just we'll have a glance over what are the different acts that we saw as part of the company rule, and then we will move on to the Crown Rule. All right. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was useful, and I will leave the link of all the previous videos in the comment section, as well as the link of this Google slide which I have prepared, so that you can also refer it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.